Back in the 1970s, the average price of a cup of coffee was around 25 cents. Just take a moment to process that number. It is a tiny amount of money, yet back then, it was enough to secure a steaming hot drink. Fast forward to 2024, and that same quarter would likely only buy you an empty cup, maybe even without the lid. The physical coin remains exactly the same weight, the same metal, yet its power has evaporated. You aren't just seeing prices climb, you're witnessing your money lose its strength. This is the silent erosion of your wealth, and we're going to examine exactly how this happens and why your wallet feels lighter every year, even when you haven't spent a dime. Consider a mental blueprint of a supermarket shelf. If we go back to the year 2000, a burger cost around $2. Jump to 2024, and that same burger, the same beef, the same bun, the same lettuce, might now cost nearly $6. The item hasn't changed, yet the price tag has tripled. This isn't just happening with food. Consider a movie ticket. In the year 2000, a movie ticket cost around $5, but by 2024, it could easily cost more than $10. When you see these numbers side by side, you realize the $10 bill in your pocket today doesn't hold the same weight it did 24 years ago. You aren't paying more because the movie is more cinematic or the burger is larger. You're paying more because the currency itself has lost its strength. This is the gap between what a number says and what that number can actually buy. To understand what's happening, we have to shift our perspective. Most people frame inflation as rising prices over time. But let's be clear, in a macroeconomics context, it's defined differently. Inflation isn't merely about the rise in the prices of goods and services. It's fundamentally about the falling value of money. When those prices rise, the money in your pocket effectively loses its power. To track this, economists use a tool called the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. This index acts as a measurement for inflation by tracking a basket of goods, a representative sample of things people buy, to see how much more expensive life becomes. When the CPI shows a climb, it confirms that the value of money is going down, meaning you need more of those same dollar bills to buy the exact same items you purchased previously. Let's think about a group of monkeys and their bananas. If the monkeys have only one banana, it's considered rare and therefore highly valuable. But if the monkeys suddenly grow more bananas than they can eat, they become common, and their value drops. This is the logic of value, and it's how the four main drivers of inflation work. First, we have demand-pull inflation. This occurs when too many people want to buy something, but there isn't enough of it. Consider a scenario where a tornado destroys corn crops, reducing the available supply from 10 tons to 3 tons. Because there's less corn, yet the same amount of hunger, prices might jump from $2 to $3 per can. The demand pulls the price up. Then there's cost-push inflation. This happens when prices rise because it costs more to produce things, even if the demand stays the same. Consider a popcorn seller who sells his bags for $3. He spends $1 on corn, $1 on other costs, and keeps $1 as profit. If the cost of corn increases to $2, he has to raise the price to $4 to maintain that same $1 profit. He's pushing the cost onto the consumer. Next, we hit built-in inflation. This is a feedback loop, a wage price spiral, where rising prices increase the cost of living, and that leads workers to ask for higher wages. If a shoe company's workers see their expenses rise from $900 to $1,000, they might ask for a raise to $1,200 to stay afloat. To cover those new higher wages, the company raises the price of the shoes to maintain their profit margins, creating a cycle that feeds itself. Finally, there's the role of the money supply. Too much currency in the economy can cause prices to rise. If the government gives everyone an extra $5, increasing individual holdings from $5 to $10, people might want to buy more bread. Since the bakery cannot suddenly produce infinite loaves of bread in an hour, the baker raises the price from $5 to $10. More money chasing fewer goods leads to higher prices. How do we put a number on this invisible erosion? The most common way to measure the inflation rate is through the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. Think of the CPI as a giant moving shopping basket that tracks how the prices of everyday goods and services change over time for urban consumers. This isn't just a statistical exercise. It's the primary tool used to adjust for inflation, allowing economists to calibrate historical data and determine how the government decides to escalate federal payments, such as Social Security, to keep up with the cost of living. Yet there's a catch. A low overall CPI doesn't always mean prices are rising slowly for the items you actually need. Essential items like bread, milk, and eggs might rise significantly by 10%, 5%, or 6%, while non-essentials like scented candles or specific electronics might only rise by 1.25%, or movie tickets might stay flat at 0%. When you average those together, the final number looks stable, but your grocery bill tells a different story. The CPI provides the map, but it doesn't always capture the weight of the items you actually carry in your basket. Reflecting on these measurements, one detail really stands out: the disconnect between the index and the individual. The CPI provides a macroeconomic bird's-eye view, but it masks the specific intensity of price changes that hit household budgets. If the price of energy surges, but the price of leisure goods falls, the index might appear stable. Nevertheless, for a family spending the majority of their income on heat and transportation, the math of that index doesn't reflect their reality. It acts as a blunt instrument for a nuanced problem. Most people assume a world of zero inflation is the ideal, but central banks usually aim for an annual inflation rate of around 2 to 3%. This small amount of inflation encourages spending over saving, which helps businesses grow and creates jobs. If you hold on to your money, it loses a tiny bit of value each year, which pushes you to use it now rather than later. It creates a gentle pressure to keep the economy moving. But what happens when the scale tips too far in the opposite direction? That's where we find deflation, when the inflation rate drops below 0%, meaning prices are actually going down. While lower prices sound like a win for the consumer, the reality is dangerous. Deflation can be catastrophic because companies may be forced to cut wages to maintain profits as their revenue drops, leading to a situation where no one has enough money to buy anything. We've seen this play out in extreme cases. The Great Depression in the United States during the 1930s was fueled by massive deflation. When people stopped buying because they expected prices to drop even further, the economy stalled until the entire system collapsed. It's a precision balancing act. Too much inflation erodes wealth, but a drop below 0% can freeze the entire engine of global commerce. Venezuela experienced hyperinflation, a systemic collapse where money ceases to be a tool for trade. This was caused by excessive money printing, causing the currency to lose value so rapidly that prices increase hourly. In Venezuela, people reportedly threw money on the street because the paper it was printed on was worth more than the currency value itself. This is the same destructive pattern seen in Zimbabwe and Weimar Germany, where the sheer volume of paper currency became more valuable as fuel for stoves or scrap paper than as a currency for buying bread. When the money supply explodes, the money itself becomes trash. Central banks use monetary policy to control inflation, which involves adjusting interest rates and managing the money supply. When inflation is too low, the central bank keeps interest rates low to make borrowing cheaper, encouraging spending and investment. When inflation is too high, they do the opposite. To fine-tune this, central banks can control the money supply through what are called open market operations. In an expansionary open market operation, the central bank buys government bonds from commercial banks. Think of institutions like Bank of America, HSBC, or SBI. By buying these bonds, the central bank injects cash into the commercial bank's reserves, increasing the money supply and encouraging loans. If the economy is overheating and inflation is climbing too fast, they switch gears. In a contractionary open market operation, the central bank sells government bonds to commercial banks to retract money from the economy. By pulling that liquidity out, they slow down the engine of price increases. Governments manage demand through fiscal policy, adjusting tax rates and public spending. To reduce inflation, governments may raise taxes to increase the cost of living, reducing the amount of disposable income available for spending. When people have less in their pockets, they buy less, and the pressure on prices drops. Alternatively, to increase inflation when it is too low, governments may reduce taxes to allow people to keep more money and spend more. Furthermore, there is another tool in the fiscal toolkit: government spending. Lowering government spending on large-scale projects like building bridges or highways reduces the amount of money flowing into the economy. These projects can involve thousands of workers and be worth millions or billions of dollars. By scaling back these massive investments, the government effectively pulls money out of the system, slowing the economy down to a manageable pace. Since the money in your pocket is effectively evaporating, the question becomes how to stop the leak. Investing is the primary way to protect money from losing value due to inflation. Some people turn to gold, which is used as a hedge against inflation because it has a limited physical supply and high demand. Others seek more aggressive growth to outpace the erosion. Higher yield investments like stocks, cryptocurrencies, and real estate are preferred by some to beat inflation. Yet, there's a catch. You cannot simply look at the percentage gain on your portfolio. To find the real value of an investment, the inflation rate must be subtracted from the return on investment. If your bank account earns 5% interest, but inflation is 6%, you are losing purchasing power despite the number in your account growing. You are gaining numbers, but losing value. Numbers don't lie, but they can be deceptive. To see how different assets behave against the silent eraser, consider a hypothetical example. Consider placing $1,000 in a savings account in 2014. By 2024, with a 1% average annual deposit interest, that money grew to $1,104. If the average inflation rate is 2% per year, $1,000 in 2014 is equivalent to approximately $1,200 in 2024. You didn't gain wealth. You lost purchasing power. Contrast that with other paths. If you had placed that same $1,000 in gold in 2014, it would have grown to $1,800 by 2024 with a 6% average annual return. That's a clear win over inflation. The real jump happens with high growth assets. In a hypothetical example, an investment of $1,000 in Apple stocks in 2014 grew to $9,000 by 2024 with a 25% average annual return. When you subtract the inflation rate from the return, you find the real value. The difference between a 1% return and a 25% return isn't just a number. It's the difference between your money working for you or slowly evaporating into the air. Inflation isn't a monster that suddenly appears, but a slow, invisible leak in the bucket of your wealth. It's the reason why your grandfather's 25-cent coffee was a possibility, and why your current grocery bill feels like a theft. It's a balance between the cost of production, the money supply, and the human desire to buy. It's a systemic reality of modern economics. Looking at the future, the digital transition of currency and the shift toward decentralized finance may change how we manage this erosion. As we move toward a more digital economy, the question remains, will we ever find a currency that truly holds its value? Or is the constant, slow decay of our money designed to keep us moving, spending, and working? The struggle to protect your purchasing power isn't just a distance between numbers, but a race against a silent eraser that never stops moving.